I'm Holly, and this is Wild Blessings Teaching Tuesday. So happy you've joined me, and this is our weekly class. So today is just such an exciting day because I'm going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite wild edible plants. It's probably the ultimate superfood. The Russians call it the elixir of life. Some other amazing things about it. I think we spend more money trying to get rid of this plant, and yet it's got more value than you can imagine. Ralph Emerson said, "What is a weed? It's a plant whose virtues have not yet been discovered." If you can know a few things about 100 weeds, this is one weed that you want to know 100 things about. So get your notebook out and start taking notes and write down, see if you can come up with 100 things that you learned today. It's the world's most famous weed. It's the carpet of sunny yellow blossoms, a true herald of spring. I'm always herbing around when you come on screen. And so what I just did is I just chopped up some dandelion root, and I'm about to serve tea. So the tea that I'm going to serve is dandelion root iced coffee. So I made the dandelion root, dug it up and roasted it, and then powdered it. And then now I made it cold last night. I added some oat milk, and the flavoring that I sweetened it with was actually maple syrup that I had tapped from our sugar maple trees this spring. So I'm going to pour one for you and one for me. And just to make it special, I'm going to put some Ready Whip on top. And as we talk about this plant, you'll see why this is such an amazing drink. Whether it's cold or hot, it's so delicious. It's a great coffee substitute. All right, so I'll put that down here and take a sip. Wow, that is so good. Everything from the earth except for the whipped cream on top. The reason why I chose dandelion today is because it's kind of seasonal. Those flowers are out now in mass, but they won't be as abundant throughout the summer. The plant will still be there, but the flowers will be gone, and they make such great fritters and good wine and all kinds of wonderful things. So I just wanted to recommend that we start with that today. The other thing I was struggling with is, should I just talk about spring greens, because they're also ephemeral. And the reason why they're ephemeral is because it's just in this early spring when they're the most tender, when the energy is all there, before they've shot up their buds and their flowers and start making seed. That's when you want to get the spring greens. And so I want to cover them all with you. Our scripture verse for last week is, "O Lord, how many and varied are your works? In wisdom you've made them all. The whole earth is full of your riches." And so that we're going to learn about one of the best riches, one of the ultimate health foods and absolute doctor, pharmacy, all in one, the amazing dandelion. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit first about befriending plants. So one of the things that I taught for maybe a year and a half at the Mercantile was a whole series on befriending plants. And it's my goal to do this with all of my favorite edible plants. And if you have not yet gone to my website, when a pop-up shows, give me your email address so I can have your contact info, and then I can send you important information and stuff through email. And you will get, as a result, this wonderful edible wild plants, Holly's favorites, from leaves and shoots and flowers and buds and pods and seeds and berries and roots and mushrooms and fruits and trees. So this is kind of a bucket list. And so I would take yours, print it out, and highlight the ones that you check, the ones that you know you can identify, and highlight the ones that we do in class. So we've already done pine, and we learned about that in detail. And today we will learn in great detail why dandelion is such an amazing plant. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and do that, and you can be on my contact list. When you're befriending someone, you want to know what their name is. You want to know their first and their last name. To really appreciate a person, you want to know a little bit about their history, maybe their family. You want to know, observe what they look like. And if you really know the person, you have known them for years and you've seen them from a childhood to adulthood, etc. So what I came up with the idea of befriending plants as if they were our friends, and because they are, and they are a gift from God to us. And so here's a poem that I just love that one of my apprentices wrote, Heidi Kennedy, about dandelion. She said, "What gives milk and its children fly, turns into a puff as time goes by, named for the king of beasts, yet wears a cheery face, given to us in plenty by God's good grace." Isn't that awesome? So you'll be writing a dandelion poem too, for homework for next week. And I really think the best way to do it is take notes while you're listening. And then you can take those notes and make them kind of bones to your poem, and go outside and get a dandelion, and because they're everywhere, especially this time of year, the flowers anyway, and bring it in. If you want to go get one right now, great, go for it. And so you can look at it while we talk about it. But and it's fun to bring it in with the root and all, so that you can really look at all the parts of the plant. So the formal name of my formal name is Holly Elaine Drake, and it used to be Holly Elaine Endries, but I married this amazing man, and I'm Holly Elaine Drake. So that's my formal name. And the formal name for dandelion is Taraxacum officinalis, and the Taraxacum stands for bitter, and officinalis means that it was an official medicine of during the time of the Roman Empire, literally till up to the 1900s for sure. There are over 100 species of dandelion, and the family is the Asteraceae family, or the sunflower family. It used to be called the Compositae family because they are composites of ray flowers, and they turn into puffballs. So any flower that you see that turns into a puffball, it will be a part of this. Well, not any, because there's some that aren't, but it's a good chance that that is in the Compositae or the Asteraceae family. Some of their nicknames, and we'll talk about these as we learn more about the plant, are piss in bed, lion's tooth, blowball, clock flower, fairy clock, monk's head, and swine snout. Here's the swine snout. This is the mature flower that is closed up, and we'll talk about why they close up and when they close up and how many times they close up. And the reason why it's called monk's head is because when you've blown off that puff, I wish I had a puffball with me, but when you've blown off all of those seeds, it looks like a man's head that's bald. So they call it monk's head. So those are some of the nicknames, they're common names, but the formal name is Taraxacum officinalis. All right, a little bit of the history. If I have time at the end, I'll read a fun folklore story to the kids, but we'll just go talk about why this is an important plant to me right now. Honestly, I don't think I would be here at all if it wasn't for this particular plant, because when my husband's grandmother lived in Lowell, Massachusetts with 10 children, they lived in one room with 10 kids above a bakery. And it was during the Depression, and they kept the place as neat as a pin. They were hungry. And so Yaya would go, Athena was her name, would go across the street to the park, and she would pick dandelions. And then she would cook the roots. She would simmer them in water and then make a pot liquor out of that and add some salt and whatever to it. And the baker downstairs would often give them day-old bread, and then they would get this bread and dip it in the pot liquor, and that's what they would take the leaves as well, and then simmer them into the pot liquor, and then eat that for many a meal. And so my mother-in-law really didn't like dandelions because it just reminded her of that kind of poverty, but that really helped them not just to survive, but to thrive. And so I love that story. It was very important food during World War I and World War II. In fact, until the 1800s, people would rip up grass in their yards so that they could have dandelions growing, because they knew the value. Some other amazing thing, the most nutritious, sugar-free food in the world. It is considered to be one of the 5 most nutritious vegetables. If there is one plant that you could eat every day for greater health, whether it's the blossom, the leaf, or the root, it would be this one. There are dandelion societies that are there to protect the dandelions. It was also one of the bitter herbs in Passover feast. And in Vineland, New Jersey, which is near where Linda lived for a while, it's called the dandelion capital of the world, and they grow $500,000 worth of dandelion annually. And every spring they have a festival where people come from all over bringing their dandelion dishes, and they have these dandelion cordials and wines and stuff, and just a big party and celebration of dandelion. Okay. The Pilgrims brought them over from Europe. They brought a lot of seeds over, but they couldn't imagine life without dandelion. One of the folklore about dandelion is that if you make a wish and blow on the seed head, the puffball, and all of them blow away, then your wish will come true. I remember doing that as a kid. Another thing you can ask someone when you get to know them, or ask a plant, is where do you live? And in the case of dandelion, they live everywhere, and they're remarkably adaptable. They've even been found at 18,000 feet altitude. Now we'll talk about their physical appearance. So when you're getting to know someone, you want to really look at what they look like and look at their face and their structure. The first thing I'm going to look at is the stature of a dandelion. It is, it has this, do you see this basal rosette? How all these leaves come from the crown, which is above the root. And so it's not going to be very tall if you mow your grass. But if you find dandelion in an area where grass is not mowed, they can be sometimes 15 or 18 inches tall. And those are really fun to find, because then you've got these gigantic leaves and these long stems, and they're really fun. So the stature is a basal rosette. And the leaf is, the stem, by the way, is hollow. So, and the leaf is deeply toothed. You see those deep tooths? That's why they call it Dandelion, the tooth of the lion. And it's smooth. There's no hairs on this. Someone asked me, please go over look-a-likes. So there's cat's ear and hawk's beard, and those are and chicory that look like dandelion, but they're hairy, and I'll tell you about the other differences, but they're all edible. This is just way more palatable and way more medicinal than the other ones. So there's no hairs on a dandelion. Also, one of the other ways you can tell the difference is that there's one out of every stem comes one flower. Whereas with those other look-a-likes, which are still edible, so I'm not worried about whether you know the difference, they will have many flowers coming off of one stem. Okay. So also about the leaves, they are naturally grooved so that they will just bring water down to the roots. So the way in which they have these natural grooves, and the teeth point backwards. There are many different varieties. So some of them won't be near as serrated as this, or as toothed. Some of them are a little less, but they're all dandelions if they come from the blossom comes from one stem. And it's smooth. Okay, the face, or the flower, is really, really many, many flowers. It's actually 150 ray flowers with all of the female and male parts of the flower right there. So it's like a part of a whole. Each one of them can go to seed. And what's fascinating about the flower is that it opens the first time. Before it opens, it's a bud. You see that bud right there? See, there's some buds right there. And these buds are so delicious. We'll talk about this when we get to the edible part. But these buds will each shoot up on a stem and then turn into a flower. You want to catch these buds before they turn into flowers. That's the part you want to eat. However, once they open, it'll open and close at night to protect its pollen, and open again in the morning and close at night, or during a storm because it's trying to protect its pollen. And it does that like 5 times. And the 5th time it opens up and it's a puff ball or a seed ball of all these little seeds, which are amazing. They're shaped like screws, and the little parachutes at the end, they can blow up to 5 miles away. And then the heaviness or the heavier part of the screw will land into the soil and just screw into place and begin to germinate, which is just God's way of bringing life all full circle. Some quirks or oddities. So dandelions are known as rudderals. They are among the first plants to shoot up after the ground has been disturbed. And the reason why is because they're there to heal the skin of the earth. Dandelions will flower in the most unusual situations. And you might want to try this as an experiment. But one of the things that I did one time is I put I collected a ton of them, and I put them in a baggie in the refrigerator. And these buds opened and closed in the refrigerator and turned into puffballs. Or if you throw these into your compost bin, they're just going to keep going until they go to seed. And so they're just determined to proliferate for you, which I think is awesome. They're also a good weather forecaster, kind of strange, because they will close up when the weather is not sunny and a storm might be coming, which I think is interesting. Bees love it. There 86 different types of insects live on this, or love to benefit from this plant. Oh, and then something I haven't tried yet, but something funny that you can try is if you take the stem and a pair of scissors and just clip it an inch on one side, an inch on the other, in a couple of places, and stick it in water. It's supposed to do some kind of really weird dance. So we'll do that next week in our party. But I thought that was fun. And those of you with kids, go ahead and try that soon. In the language of flowers, dandelions mean love, which I think is cool. They also have kind of a sap to them, a white sap, which will make them sticky, but it won't hurt you to eat that. But I would wash it off. It makes it really bitter. It has a lot of medicinal properties to it. So the way you get more of this friend is by just blowing on the seed pods every time you see one, or the seed puffs, or if you dig it up and you even leave a tiny piece of the root, it will come back. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to my computer and show you some pictures. We talked last week about the ulls of foraging, whether it's edible, medicinal, useful, beautiful, reproducible, all the ulls, magical, spiritual. And so it's easier for me to share that by looking at pictures than it is to just try to describe them. All right, these are dandelion fritters. Don't they look good? Oh my goodness. All right, this is what I was telling you about, that pop-up, and this is the handout you'll get when you go there. I love this scripture. It says, God gives herbs for the service of man, Psalms 104:14, and Ezekiel 47:12, their fruit will serve for food and their leaves for healing. So this is just a really good drawing that I love, that shows all the different parts of the plant, and the way we talked about how to identify just now, going over the stature, the roots, the branching, the leaf, the shape of the leaf, the margin, which means the outside of the leaf, and the venation, meaning inside the way it's parallel or palmate, and these are palmate. And the flower face and the seeds. These were the shopping goals: edible, medicinal, practical, useful, functional, beautiful, playful, magical, plentiful, transplantable, reproducible, and spiritual. So dandelion nutrition, this is the edible part. It's 50% more vitamin C than tomatoes, and is twice as much protein than eggplant. Double the fiber of asparagus, more iron than spinach. It's more potassium than bananas, more beta carotene than carrots, loads of vitamin A, C, and E, and lots of other ones. Calcium, huge amount of calcium, phosphorus and magnesium, And this is fascinating to me. The recommended daily allowance of calcium is 800 milligrams. 1 cup of spinach is 102 milligrams. 1 cup of kale has 206 milligrams. And 1 cup of dandelion has 4,000 milligrams of calcium. So that's amazing. And look at those cute puffballs. Here's a dandelion soup that I made a broth by just putting the roots in there and simmering them till they were al dente. Then I added some buds and leaves and some miso for flavoring, some rice noodles and some sesame oil. And that is just a really nourishing lunch. Okay, then medicinally, dandelion fights inflammation. It regulates blood sugar. It lowers blood pressure. It's an amazing liver tonic, which will impact your skin as you clean up your liver. It's a natural diuretic. It's an anti-cancer benefits are astounding. It's in one of the blends, one of the plants in the Essiac tea blend. In the digestive health, it actually increases hydrochloric acid in your stomach lining, helps with weight loss, probably because it's a diuretic. It boosts your immune system. It reduces cholesterol and works against depression. The dandelion oil, olive oil makes an amazing, infused in olive oil makes a really good massage oil. So digging up the root, it's a tap root, and so it can go down pretty deep, like up to 2 feet or more. And here's my garbling trick. So if you dig up most of the root, then you can take all of the plant with it, bring it back, wash off the dirt, and then stick the root in water in a pan. So you can stick them all together, and then you can just have them fresh. Especially if you're making fritters, you need those blossoms fresh. If you pick them, they will close up. So this is the only way I have found to make fritters in a successful way, because they are just flat out fresh as you are picking them in your kitchen. And then you put them in batter and put them in some olive oil or coconut oil and fry them up and make a dipping sauce. So the dandelion root is edible. After you have chopped up the root, you're just going to roast it in the oven and then powder it, and you treat it as if it was an instant coffee. The root can also be a vegetable. Now the crowns, which are right above the root, are, boy, they sure are muddy. So it takes a lot of cleaning to get them clean, but they taste like celery and they have a texture of a crunchy celery. And those are delicious too. So on the right there, you can see I've made a casserole, and it has some edible roots in there and the dandelion crowns. Here are the buds that we described earlier, and those buds are so yummy. And the way I fixed this, I'll be doing a video on this week, but I fixed it with some bacon grease, stir-fried, and some bacon bits added to it, some feta cheese, and a little bit of, I think I used a little bit of orange juice, but it was so, so, so good. The stems, you can tempura them like beans. And the leaves are so high in beta carotene and all of those minerals we talked about before. And if you can find it, you can eat them raw. You can, as a spinach substitute, as a pot herb. I love to make vinegar out of them. You can powder them to make flour. Okay, their bitterness helps to stimulate the digestive enzymes. One of the things I'm going to do this week is I'm going to take the flour that I made and mix it with salt and put it in a salt shaker so I can get the benefits when I'm using salt. You can drink the pot liquor to beautify your appearance and harvest the leaf just before flowering. Potassium is super important because it will regulate your water balance, important for your nervous system. It has 3 times more potassium than other greens. It is the ultimate health food. High in vitamin A, which enhances your immunity. vitamin C. It's an antioxidant, proper tissue growth and repair. It helps to slow the aging process. So just eat your dandelions. Here I made them into taropitas. See, what did I have here? Oh, I made a pizza. Down below on the right is a dandelion casserole. So I just used it instead of spinach. I would use dandelion anytime I can. And on the left here, I sauteed up the dandelion leaves and then made them look like a stem. And then I took a red pepper and I cut it a little disc and made a kind of like a poached egg inside. Dandelion root coffee to the right of that. So you can make with the flower blossoms, you can make jellies and wines and sodas. And what I always do is I pick the flowers off of the sepals so that you don't have that bitterness of the calyx. So here you see a lot of flower blossoms. To make into dandelion root soda or dandelion wine. It has a lot of the lactobacilli for fermentation to help it through the winter. So you can use that with burdock root and other roots to make a soda culture to create a soda. And I just flavor my dandelion. It doesn't have a lot of flavor to it, but has a lot of nutrition. So when you're infusing it, you can add to that orange juice, lemon. So you have a little bit of more flavor to go with all that nutrition. Oh, here's that picture of how I took the bitter green parts away from the flower blossoms. And that's just a fun thing to do with a bunch of kids because you have to bend down a lot picking dandelion blossoms, and then it takes a lot of time to take them off of their green parts. Look at all this abundance. And then there they are. I told you about those little seed heads, or the seeds are shaped kind of like screws. And look at those cute little parachutes. So they spread their seeds through the wind or through your breath if you blow on them. Okay. Great are the works of the Lord. They are studied by all who delight in them. Splendid and majestic are his works. He has made his wonders to be remembered. That was our first memory verse on pine, but I think that dandelion deserves this as well. Okay, and don't forget to go to wildblessings.com, and there I have done a really great blog on dandelions. I think it's called Dandelion Celebration, and there's a lot of recipes on there with the links in the blog. So please avail yourself of that if you want to learn more. So now you get a little bit of an idea why I love this plant so much. Let's look at a few of the preparations that I've made here in my kitchen. So we already talked about making the iced root coffee. I love it hot as well. Here are the roots that have been chopped up and roasted. So here they are chopped. And the more you chop them, you don't want them completely chopped, but you want to chop them pretty small. And then you stick them on a baking sheet in the oven and bake them at a low heat until they are roasted just the way you want them. If you want a dark roast them longer. I like to use a coffee grinder to put these dried, roasted pieces of root in the coffee grinder and get it to a powder, which is what I've done here. So this powder, then you just add the boiling water to, and then I sweeten it, like I said, with the maple syrup, and that's all you do to make the coffee. But because the root is so good for your liver, and the liver is so hugely important in our lives because it does over 500 functions and it keeps the toxins there and tries to eliminate them from our body. And so it's amazing, but it needs all the help it can get. And so if you eat dandelion every day, or what Susan Weed does is she takes a dandelion leaf and she puts one next to her dinner table at each meal and next to her plate, so that she can eat that either before or after the meal so that it can help her with digestive issues. And it just increases your hydrochloric acid. It gets your bile moving, your digestive juices moving. And so you can eat it in your salads, which I really recommend. But if you do, I would make sure you chop it small. Some people say to break it up with your fingers. I just use a knife. And I think that the key to eating something that's bitter in a palatable way is to chop it up small. And you can always add some counterbalance to it as well. Okay, what else do I have? Okay, these are some seeds right there. I always carry seeds with me, particularly of milkweed, burdock, and dandelion in my backpack so that I can spread them in places where they could easily grow and could be a nice place for me to harvest nearby. This here, I was a couple of days ago, I had collected a bunch of dandelion blossoms and I pulled off the flowers from the sepals and put them in water to infuse, and it's already done. So I'm going to strain this off, not now, but I'm going to strain it off, and this will be something I can use to make a dandelion blossom syrup with. You just put like equal amounts of sugar with the infused water and heat that until it becomes the consistency you want. And you don't have to do equal amounts of sugar. You can make it whatever sweetness you want it to be. But that's really a tasty way of, you can put that on pancakes or just use it as your sweetener, but it has all of the nutrients in it as well. Dandelion vinegar is an amazing way to use this incredible plant. So what I would recommend with that is taking the entire plant, and I'll talk about the difference between the spring and the fall dandelion, but take the whole thing and then pour apple cider vinegar over that. And I ran out of apple cider vinegar, so I need to get more. But after you've done that, then you're going to steep it for 2 to 3 weeks. But you never want to put a metal lid on because it will eat and corrode. The vinegar corrodes metal. So do you see how I just took a baggie and cut it and then stuck it on here? Or if you have a plastic lid, that works as well. So here's some dandelion vinegar that's I'm almost out, so I thought I better make more from spring leaves. And the spring has more of the taraxacum and which is great for the bile and so forth. So one of the reasons why getting your liver healthy is a good thing is because the liver kind of holds negative emotions and anger. And so by eating dandelion, it will really help with your emotions if you struggle with anger and things like that. Okay, then this is a tincture that I made of the spring plant, the whole plant. And so this was just made with, you put it in a mason jar, and instead of putting vinegar on it, I used, what did I use this time? I usually say what I use is probably Scotch whiskey. And I like using Scotch whiskey because most vodka is with, is it corn that they make vodka out of? I don't know. Potatoes. Oh, and a lot of potatoes are genetically modified or they have a lot of chemicals in them. So I like to use a minstrel that is going to be healing as well. And so Scotch whiskey, Herbalist mentor Heather Neon-Flagier recommends using that most of the time, depending on what you're using. If you're doing something with juniper, you want to use gin. That's a whole nother class. Okay, then here are the leaves that have been dried and powdered. And this is what I'm going to take and mix with salt to put in my salt shaker so that I can be getting the leaves, dandelion leaf, anytime I salt. Really, it is a self-contained pharmacy. And it's got choline, carotenes, minerals, salts. It's just amazing. Super ally for the liver. This is what Maud Greaves says in 1931. She said, a broth of dandelion roots sliced and stewed in boiling water with some leaves of sorrel and the yolk of an egg, taken daily for some months, has been known to cure seemingly intractable cases of chronic liver congestion. And this was interesting. I don't know who Adele Dawson is, but I got this from Susan Weed's book. 80% of the patients treated with dandelion root preparations in Chinese hospitals recovered from appendicitis without surgery. Can't imagine that. Don't try that. Also good for kidney and bladder disease, kidney stones, diabetic issues, gout, edema. The root is especially well blessed with sodium and potassium, electrolytes needed in plentiful supply when a strong diuretic effect is to be accomplished without stress to the kidneys. And also, it doesn't take out the potassium, it adds it in. So Most diuretics, you pee out the potassium, but this puts it back in, so it makes it just amazing. The leaf is amazing for blood flow and for lymph. I also just was researching that the greens can improve the enamel on your teeth, and I am fascinated by that, but it doesn't surprise me because it's so high in calcium. This is a Bach flower of the dandelion, and I'm going to read to you what that does. It's for if you need to relax and let go of fear and nervousness. Just put a drop of this in under your tongue. Okay, and then we wanted to talk about how useful it is. And so useful, it's not like pine where you can build buildings with it and so forth, but it has a few uses. For example, the dye. So if you dye with the flowers, you'll get a light yellow color. And if you dye fabrics with the roots, you'll get a rich magenta. And there's no mordant required. And then another great use about this is that it is a soil corrector. It uses, it creates drainage channels in compacted soils, and it restores mineral health to abused soils, aerates, and it attracts earthworms. In the Doctrine of Signatures, which is kind of a way of learning about a plant just by looking at it and by observing it, dandelion is a survivor. Have you ever seen it growing in the cracks of a sidewalk or like in a rock or something? It's got this bright yellow flower, which indicates that it is specific for liver health. And it can withstand 20,000 watts of electricity. So dandelions are nature's way of giving dignity to weeds. The simple abundance of the dandelion may perhaps be a sign that we should be using a lot of this green gift. Don't forget our scripture, and I really want you to learn this one in particular. O Lord, how many and varied are your works. In wisdom, you've made them all. The whole earth is full of your riches. There is just so much abundance and so much wealth to be learned and gained from knowing more and incorporating this plant in your life. So I recommend, just reading up on it. And every book on edible plants has something on dandelion. But here's one that my friend Tracy Terry gave me called The Great Dandelion Cookbook. And it has amazing recipes that I'll be using this week as I cook with dandelions. And here's one on dandelion medicine. And I'm not really supposed to talk about how plants can actually heal something. We can talk about how they support your liver, support your digestion or your kidneys or whatever. But if you do have cancer, this would be a plant to really look into. Or if you want to prevent from that, then just make sure you're eating dandelion every day. I'm going to be giving you some free handouts. So this one is called my Dandelion Action List, and it has all of my culinary things I wanted to do, medicinal things, how to wildcrafting ideas, craft ideas, cosmetic ideas, and future further study ideas with dandelion, which this is kind of like a bucket list, which I've already completed many times over with this plant. So that's kind of fun. So I'm going to read this folklore story of how dandelions came to be. Centuries ago, an old miser found a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Instead of sharing it, he decided to bury it in the ground so that only he could find it. He took the gold home, he put it into a sack, and he went to bed. While he was asleep, however, a mouse searching for food gnawed a hole in the sack. The next morning, very early, so that none could see or follow him, the old man got up and went off to the deep woods to bury his treasure. He was so intent on his plan that he had made that he did not notice the coins dropping out of the sack one by one through the hole that the mouse had made. Finally, when he reached the darkest part of the forest, he realized the sack seemed very light. He looked inside, and sure enough, it was empty, except for a few coins that were left at the bottom. Aha, he cried, all my gold has fallen out. Well, I'll just go back and pick it up again. He looked around. That should be very easy, for I can see them from here, shining in the grass. He hurried back and bent down to pick them up, but to his astonishment, he could not, for the gold pieces seemed rooted to the ground. Sure enough, When the old miser looked closely, he saw that what had been a shiny golden coin was now a beautiful yellow flower. Amazed, he hurried from one golden spot to another, but all the coins had taken root, for the wood sprites had overheard his plan to hide the gold away, and to punish him for his selfishness, they changed the coins into dandelion flowers for everyone to love and to share. So I hope that this talk has helped you appreciate this humble yet super powerful green gift more, that since you've learned about its incredible riches that it has to offer you. So thank you for joining me. And let me just quickly go over your field work for this coming week. Keep up your hiking habit, keep watching trees, keep journaling, write a poem about dandelion. So I recommend taking your notes of everything you wrote, looking at those notes, and then looking at the plant itself and writing down everything you see. What does it look like? What does it remind you of? And then just make those brainstorm for 5 minutes, and then set your timer for 10 minutes. And during that time, just take your words that you've written and write them into a poem. And it does not have to rhyme, but I promise you that you will feel so much more connected to this plant if you give it the respect and the dignity of writing a poem about it. Eat dandelion every day. So collect them and eat them. Remember, if you want to have fritters, then you're going to have to dig up part of the root and keep it in water so that your flowers can be wide awake when you're dipping them into the batter, and then holding them by the calyx and putting them into the oil to cook them like that. Keep up your sit spot. Keep up your 5 minutes of silence in your sit spot. And also, I'm going to be sending out a crossword puzzle on dandelions tonight so that you can help remember the things that we've been discussing. God bless you, and wild blessings are abounding.